Buckeye Talk coming to you from Ohio State's 35-28 loss to Oregon here in the 2021 home opener, snapping Ohio State's, I think it was 25-game regular season winning streak, had never lost a game in the regular season under Ryan Day, including his time as the interim coach in 2018. Doug, why did Ohio State lose this game?
Because of the thing that we've sort of been talking about all along, that they don't have a defense that can shut people down, and they don't have a quarterback that can save them. So you need both of those things. It's funny, the corners actually played pretty good, which is, we talk about the secondary a lot. But it's the sort of fundamental parts of the defense. It does look a lot like 2018 when it's these big plays and bad angles and guys out of position and losing contain on the edge. And it's like, I don't even know, like, whose fault that was. It's not like a corner blows coverage. It's like, but there's sure a bunch of Oregon guys running free at inopportune times. So it's sort of the basics of the defense. And it is partially scheme, which is on Kerry Combs, but it's also partly on Ryan Day as a head coach. And it is partially, when they have those moments, they don't have a Chase Young or Ryan Shazier or a Marshawn Lattimore to save them. And they needed to be saved today. And this is a team that was fundamentally flawed defensively and doesn't have enough saviors otherwise, and the result's a loss.
Steven, why did Ohio State lose this game?
I understand the defense is bad, but they were down 21-7 at one point. And if someone would have told you in July that Oregon was going to have 21 points against Ohio State, you probably would have believed it, given the questions we had about defense. If someone would have told you that Ohio State would have had 7 points going into this third quarter, you would have looked at them like they were crazy. I don't think this offense is aggressive enough in the first half. And I understand you have a young quarterback, but you have the two best receivers in college football. And as Jackson Smith-Njigba showed today and how he flashed as a freshman, that's a 5-star freaking receiver who didn't start getting involved until the third quarter. One of the things in 2018 was the defense was bad, but the offense was so good that it made up for it until it didn't. The offense never gave itself a chance to make up for the fact that this defense was going to be bad. If Ohio State's offense if it's a 21-14 game at halftime, it doesn't matter how bad the defense is playing because the offense is rolling. The offense didn't get rolling until too late, and by the time it got rolling, the defense stopped getting stops. They only gave up 14 points in the first half, which is pretty impressive given our expectations to them. So maybe that's part of it. They got to be a little bit more aggressive and give this defense a little bit of leeway, and they're not doing that right now.
Last week, Ohio State, in the opener against Minnesota, 5 touchdowns at 50 or more yards. Today, they only had one play, I think, longer than 29 yards. Oregon did a better job forcing Ohio State to drive the length of the field. If Ohio State's big plays aren't there, that's where you saw some susceptibility, some vulnerability today. They got past midfield. I think the stats were, once they got past midfield in the first half of this game, they carried the ball 8 times for 14 yards, and Stroud was 4 of 8 passing for 66 yards. And that included something you were kind of talking about earlier, some garbage stats. A dump off to Travion Henderson and went for 17 yards. So it was a lack of execution beyond the 50-yard line in the first half was what I thought really sunk Ohio State. I will say also, though, from the defensive side of things, this was a defense that the last couple of years had Pete Werner that it never left the field, the guy that was like the anchor of the middle of that defense at linebacker. Before that, you had Malik Harrison, who was like the anchor of the middle of that defense. Ohio State either does not believe it has that player right now or is so invested in this like personnel package thing that they're doing right now that they're going in that direction in spite of having that player. I don't know which of those two things it is, but I think it needs that presence. And I don't know if it has to come at linebacker, but I think they're missing it there among other places.
Just let me add, they had 3 drives that stopped because they got stopped on 4th down.
Right.
And they converted the one at the end, but if they had been a little bit on 4th down, I thought the decisions by Ryan Day to pass up long field goals or to not punt, they were the right decisions. But you've got to make more of those. If they had made 1 or 2 of those, they might have won.
And there was another one that he passed up to kick a long field goal and instead pooched it down there. They pin Oregon at the 1-yard line, and Oregon rips off a 99-yard drive. And the one time they did convert a 4th down and got a touchdown out of it, Oregon then turned right around and went like 74 yards in 6 plays. So as you were kind of saying, or we were talking earlier, Stephen, like the offense and defense just never synced it up at the right time. It was like, it's almost like a basketball thing where like you need to get stops on defense so you can really run your offense, and that wasn't happening. They just were not in sync with that today.
I think people are okay if I go along on this. There's a vibe still on Twitter during the game, like Oregon was letting it go there at the end. And a lot of people are like, hey, Ohio State's going to pull this out. And in the past, Justin Fields pulls out a game like that. Chase Young pulls out a game like that. Ohio State, I think, has 2 guys right now who can pull out a game like that. But those 2 guys need someone else to get them the ball. Chase Young can do it by himself. Justin Fields, as a quarterback, can do it by himself. Their best players are receivers, and that's tough because it's not even that their running backs are best players. It's not like their best players are in the wrong spots. And I think Chris Olave was ready to pull this game out for them, and then C.J. Stroud flipped it over his head and threw an interception right when he couldn't. And that is, they are a step short with game-saving players at the positions where you are most able to save a game.
All three wide receivers had 100 yards receiving today. I don't know how often that's happened in Ohio State. I don't know how often you just see that in football in general. But to your point, it doesn't matter because wide receivers are great, but they rely on someone else to help them be great. The quarterback always has the ball. The defensive end, they can just go get the quarterback. Even a cornerback, you can shut down the side of the field, or you can just hand it off to a running back like we saw in 2019 with J.K. Dobbins. When players have to rely on something else to get them the ball, it doesn't matter how dominant they are because you have to consistently find ways to get them the ball, and teams can take that away from you.
But more to the point, those yards came in empty possessions too often today. They came in possessions that did not lead to points, and that's why it's 35-28 in Oregon's favor.
Keep going. I think people are upset, and they want an explanation for this. We kind of joked last week at Minnesota. It's like, oh, they only ran 48 plays because they held these big plays. Because when they got the ball to those guys, they cashed it in. Those throws to Olave and Wilson against Minnesota were not empty because they led directly to touchdowns. There were times here, like you said, that's a great catch, that's a great thing, but then you got to do more. And it really shows, like, if they're not getting 70-yard touchdowns, they might be in a little bit of trouble, which is they have that ability, but they're at a point right now where they're relying on that so much. It is hard to live in a world where you have to get 70-yard touchdowns to win.
And at the same time, you probably, if you're Ohio State, I don't care who you're playing, feel like you should never allow a 99-yard touchdown drive. And if they just don't allow one 99-yard touchdown drive in this game, we might still be playing out here instead of us talking about this. So get the text 614-350-3315 for analysis like this all week. And make sure you listen to the podcast, Buckeye Talk. If you're not already a listener or subscriber, find us on iTunes. Find us wherever you find all other podcasts. We're there 5 days a week.